And now all of a sudden the stock price shoots up, and the folks that built the whole deal together through the SPAC can cash out like very early, and then everyone else is sometimes left as the sucker holding the bag later.
So I have the timeline from ATI, and Dave is right. Dave going blind on that, like no notes in front. There's no way he had notes in front of him.
We did not prepare that. That's all off the cuff, ladies and gentlemen.
Here's the 6 things that happened.
Wow. All right. Where do we start? Let's kind of overview. So I want to talk about ATI going private. I want to talk about just like a little daydream about if I had taken ATI private, what I would do with it. We could talk about like surge pricing, you know, whether you're the socialist who believes it's the beginning of all evil, or you're the capitalist that says, hey, it gives me a chance to discount less competitive times. And I think we had a couple other topics on the menu, but let's open with ATI. Dave, this is kind of in your world a little bit. What do you know about ATI going private?
Well, I know Jimmy, I think Jimmy shared it with us, and I heard it from, I think someone else sent it to me. And I don't know the number specifically, but I'm pretty sure their cost per share, the share amount per share was nearing zero. It was under $1 a share I think this whole year, or most of this year. And it continued to get cut and cut and cut, and they went private. So I haven't heard much about it, but typically they would, I think, have to buy back all or many of the public shares from the, like if you and I or Jim, go ahead. I mean, they would have to buy it back at whatever would be either the agreed upon rate or the current stock price. Seems like they would need a lot of money for that. Like, where is that money coming from? So,
well, they still have value.
Unless they're taking out more debt to do that, and now they're going private with mega debt.
So here's the thing. I did the research this morning on the way in. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I remember a few. Yes, they took out additional debt. They borrowed at 8% interest. They sold a bunch of bonds to buy out the remaining shareholders. Now, 90% of the company was owned by 2 parties. They already owned the majority of the shares. They bought out the remaining 10% at like a $2 something valuation. So they got a huge premium on what the company was trading for, which is pretty typical, but it was a tiny fraction. You know, these 2 parties already own 90% of it. When you compare, and this is what I did, I asked ChatGPT to run an analysis of US Physical Therapy, which is another publicly traded company, their balance sheet versus ATI's balance sheet. The numbers were crazy. Like US Physical Therapy, debt to revenue numbers were, you know, totally reasonable. A small percentage of revenue was debt, whereas ATI, it was like 7x. The amount of debt on the balance sheet was 7 times the revenue or something like that. So it's pretty ugly. But the reality is it was going to zero anyway. So these 2 investment groups said, hey, let's just bring it private. Going private, from what I understand, gave them the ability to make changes, to make decisions. They don't have to report to other shareholders and go public with numbers and deal with all the burden of that. So now the question is, okay, let's have a little fun. If you were the new private owner of ATI, they have a ton of therapists. They have a ton of patient visits. They have a ton of locations. What would you do with all that, right? Because if they couldn't make that work in the conventional model anyway, what else could you do to layer on top of the infrastructure that's there?
And so even before answering it or giving like some ideas, Tony's right. Like when you're public, you have to answer to like stock analysts and, you know, potentially like activist investors and other folks that are looking to potentially attack the company or have, you know, shorts and things like that on the company. So now they don't have to do that. So now they can get creative. They can do some Tony Maritato magic. They can They can do a whole bunch of things. They can test a lot of things, and they don't have to answer to anybody. That is the benefit now of them going private. So now we can talk about what are some ways that Tony takes over. He becomes CEO for a day, CEO for a quarter or a year. What would you like to see done there?
I would start with the easiest, lowest hanging fruit. Like, what else is already out there that's proven successful? We talked about Luna last week. Why wouldn't they just develop a Luna-like platform, take all of the therapists they already have on staff, make a platform that allows them to go do mobile in the home visits. They pay them the flat Luna rate, just like Luna does. Leverage, the network they already have. Obviously, I think that's number one. Number two, I would look at this population. I have more information on this population of patients than Google and Facebook and everybody else has. And I've got more pertinent information within the EMR. Why wouldn't I monetize that information internally? I'm not saying sell the information to other people, although it could be done. It could be done. But like every one of these people, they need products, they need other services, they need other things that they would benefit from. And when I was thinking about this the other day, and I'd like to get your perspective. Is this idea crossing some line somewhere? But if a patient and I are establishing goals, like, couldn't I use those goals to the benefit of the patient to figure out, okay, what other products and services would this person benefit from? Like, I can't maybe get them to all of their goals, but there are other things that can get them to their goals. And if I'm willing to sell physical therapy services to get you to that goal, why can't I sell other stuff to get you to that goal? I think those conversations, I understand a financial guy has a fiduciary responsibility, and I think we should have something similar to say, look, we have to make decisions that are in the best interest of the patient, but within that, we can do things that are financially beneficial to us as well. So these are, three directions. You've got build a Luna platform with the infrastructure you already have. I feel like you could do this in months, not years, and you already have access to a huge number of clinicians. Go into product distribution and sales. You've got a huge network of people. You've got a database of hundreds of thousands of patients over the last 6 to 18 months who would benefit. And then I would say, look, what if you got into some other ancillary service that would still benefit your patients, but is more profitable than selling CPT codes for minimum wage reimbursement? Those are the directions I would go. I would leave the PT model the way it is. Like that is a loss leader. That goes to zero. I don't even care. You're building a secondary business on top of the infrastructure.
I talked to a smart person once who tried to explain the minute they explained this to me, I didn't understand it. And the deeper they got, the more I was able to flip to I don't want to call it the dark side. It's almost like I flipped to the light side, but it depends on which side you start on, which was the data that we collect. This was a researcher at a massive hospital. He was explaining that the data that they collected was more valuable than what they were charging to get the data. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense because I can see the transaction. Look, person shows up, you do a thing, money is exchanged. Yay, we win. And then he was able to show me what they're able to do with the data 100, 1,000, 10,000 different ways. And coming from someone who didn't understand it, it really was a light bulb moment. I think this profession will resist this at all odds. I think it is a way to get what everybody wants. The ironic part is, if you're, in my opinion, if you're upfront about all of the things Tony just said and Dave is talking about, I don't think anybody's upset. I don't. I think the people that came into the model, I'm talking about our colleagues, myself included, who couldn't be able to wrap their head around it at first, but no, I'm here to do a thing and I want to charge as little as possible. But by the way, I want to have everything else at home be the greatest possible. I want to be valued. They don't get, you have to start wrapping your mind around it from both sides. But ironically, I think if you did, we're so scared when we see Amazon or Google get into healthcare, what are they going to do with all that information, right? And yet we have it. We could do something really great with it, right? But we won't. We won't. ATI will do none of this. I would love to see them do something like this because I think they could succeed. I don't. I think they'll rebrand with a new logo, or they'll come out with a new slogan. I think they'll marketing process this, and that's not the way to win.
I like the idea of the Luna platform. The challenge is that Luna raised a ton of money and they are 100% they say they're a tech company. I think they're still a service-based company that has technology, or a tech-enabled service-based company, whatever. It's a great idea, Tony, for Luna, or for ATI to build out a Luna-like platform, although that takes a lot of technical debt. You got to pay for developers. Are you going to have them in-house? You got to have them outsourced. There's going to be bugs in the app and the technology. It's way harder than just like, build out this platform, because then ATI, going through all these challenges now, would have to carve out or have some allocation to be like, we have not just an IT company that can help our therapists reset their passwords and their email. No, we actually now need like a mini tech company inside of ATI, which I think would be a big challenge. They do have everything else. They have the volume of visits. They could send out emails to the past patient list and get patients to do home visits, kind of like a Luna model. So it makes sense. I think the biggest challenge would be the building out the tech and maintaining the technology. In terms of the other idea of referring to nearby services, I just want to clarify. So are you saying if ATI is private, ATI approaches all of the personal trainers or massage therapists or other complementary services out there and says, gyms and workout facilities, yoga studios, Pilates, whatever, and basically is asking those local service providers for some lead gen, some, cost per lead to refer them? Or what was your specific ideas around how would that make money for ATI? Because I thought they would have to go just get leads or refer their patients to local service providers and get paid for that, or some revenue share or whatever.
Jimmy? I think the problem would be asking that question first. I think the smart, innovative.
Yeah, but we're talking about ATI, who is bleeding money. Yeah. So I'm thinking we're talking about ideas to get money back into ATI. So how else would we do it?
This is where you have to build the relationship first and figure out how you get paid later.
I know. It just takes time. They don't have time for technical app development or building relationships. They need money now.
Yeah. I don't think it'll work then, because now what you just said is they're negotiating from a really, really weak position. So now you're trying to make a deal to get something, and the person with a strong position, you go, great, I know you're bleeding, so what are you going to give me?
The only thing I would say is we talked again last week about how Walmart makes a significant portion of their profit, not revenue, but profit, from ads, paid ads, pay-per-click, stuff like that. Amazon, huge amount of profit from paid ads. How can they do that? Because they have the community, they have the contacts and the people. If I go back just into my little tiny EMR with thousands of cases over even just the recent years, I can't sell that information because of privacy laws and things like that. But I think there's probably a way that I could say, hey, I can put out an email, I can put out a newsletter, I can put out information to these individuals. Dave, you want to buy some marketing space on my platform? And I'm going to
yes.
Then we look at, okay, who has the highest return on a client? We go to financial planners. We go to insurance brokers. We go to individuals that are targeting high net worth clients who have, a definitive need for these kinds of services. Maybe somebody selling Aflac who wants to get access to my community of patients that would have benefited if they had an Aflac policy. So immediately I start selling ad space on to my people that I'm controlling that access. I'm the one that's sending those correspondence and that information.
Wow. Okay. So I just did a quick analysis. I was seeing where Tony was going with this, and I started to use AI to figure it out. If ATI had a TV in every clinic lobby and showed content to every patient, the average wait time, it was making this up, was 10 minutes, right? Somebody shows up 10 minutes early, some are longer, some are shorter. They'd capture about 4,100 hours of attention daily, or over 124,000 hours per month. That's equivalent to 17 and a half years of patient attention every single month. At CPM, or cost per milli, if you show that a low CPM, you're making low CPM. Yeah. Well, hold on a second. You could generate between $30,000 a month in advance-based revenue. Now that's at cost per milli.
That may not even cover their interest payments right now.
That's cost
on the,
per milli.
on the debt.
Yeah, but this is talking about the active patient in the lobby. What about the tens of thousands of
That's what
people
I mean.
who
Right.
are discharged and they left? Think about all the invoices that ATI is sending out every single day. Think about all of the correspondence that are going out. All of those communications. Those all are billboards that are available to advertise whatever kind of service you want. And then if you start to get a little bit more granular and you say, okay, this is the collection of individuals who had shoulder pain. Okay, we're going to send certain things to those individuals, back pain, certain things to those individuals. Or, this is a collection of individuals who paid on their account on time. They don't have a balance. They're not getting an invoice, but we have that information. Well, we're going to target them because we know they're consumers that'll pay their bills. We're going to target them with something very different than the person who's been in collections for 12 months. Sure. They're going to get a different kind of billboard ad going out to them along with their invoice.
Wow. That's lower than I thought. 30,000.
What's the CPM they said?
$40.
That's a high CPM.
I know. That's where I'm like, wait,
it's generous and it's still not a good number.
No, that's that. But I still think if you went in terms of relationships, even if you went in with a partnership deal, like a split with, we did break this down. It said hyper-targeted ads for health and wellness brands, partnerships with DME providers, suppliers, or insurance. It said sponsored educational content like MedBridge. I'm like, that's not the audience. That's the wrong audience.
Yeah.
Patients wouldn't want to see that. Cash pay PT service upsells, dry needling, pelvic health, running analysis. I think that's right. I think if you did that and you offered that audience, I don't know. That feels like a real partnership to me.
Yeah, I just don't know where the ethics lie in something like this. When do you cross the line of now we're being manipulative? I know so many personal things about you. I know you can't sleep. I know your anxiety is through the roof. I know that you have this, family member suffering from this condition. Like there's always such a tension in marketing between when are you manipulating for negative versus manipulating for positive, because we all manipulate. I manipulate every patient that's out there in the clinic in a positive way to get them to do the things they need to do that they wouldn't have done if they weren't in my clinic. We are all manipulators. The question is, when does it cross into a negative form of manipulation?
The ethics come down to three things. Is the content transparent and clearly sponsored? Is it evidence-based, and does it add value to the patient experience? There shouldn't be deceptive upselling or financial exploitation, and the sponsorship should be clearly disclosed, and care decisions remain independent of ad influence. It's still a gray area. It's still, you could say something is or is not.
The other thing we didn't discuss, and I don't know, I didn't look at the balance sheet close enough, is like, could they turn this into a real estate play? Like they have all of these likely leased locations, but when Barnes & Noble was suffering because Amazon came in and took over the book selling market, Barnes & Noble was able to stay solvent as a company because it owned most of the real estate that it occupied. So it's like, does ATI have the resources available maybe to start building a land portfolio, a commercial space portfolio that they would then leverage into the future? The equipment that they have, could they completely just start to look at changing the model? We've heard of medically oriented gyms. Could they do something like that where you see the success of CrossFit, you see the success of a lot of these small group fitness plans? Could they bring that into their market? I shared a post. Did you guys see this? Where I looked at the total number of licensed physical therapists in the US. I looked at the total number of private practices. So private practices, the rough estimates are like 40,000. I said, out of the total US population, how many people are expected to have a neurologic or an orthopedic condition that would benefit from physical therapy? Ran all of the numbers, all rough estimates, but ultimately we would need 5-to-1 increase in licensed physical therapists to accommodate the need that already exists out there in the market. And so while many physical therapists are banging the drum of one-on-one only and nothing is better than one-on-one and it's unethical to do anything less than one-on-one, how are you going to do one-on-one when we have a 5-to-1 deficit on what we need? Let's put a little bit of time and a little bit of effort into figuring out how we can scale physical therapy. This is where Sword and Hinge are going to eat everybody else's lunch, because now one physical therapist can manage 700 patients, 500 patients, 100 patients, as opposed to one physical therapist realistically managing 15 patients.
Can we use ATI like for good? Like what went wrong? Like what'd they do wrong? Like we're talking a lot about, over my head, by the way, we're talking stock prices and big picture things. But Jason Craig, who was my professor in PT school, taught us research. He said, listen, just keep asking 3 questions. What, so what, now what? But let's go back to what. Let's go to the first one. What went wrong? Because if you, in my opinion, if you zoom in close enough to ATI, if you guys, do you know anybody who works for ATI, either of you guys or ever did? Like, there's good people there.
Yeah, 100%.
When you zoom in, I like those people. When you look at a person at ATI, they're good people. And then when you zoom out, right, it's a huge group of people. Like, so what did they do wrong? How do we learn from it? Because if you zoom in deep enough at ATI, there's just thousands and thousands of good people. What went wrong? What'd they do?
Ask AI while we discuss it. Dave, do you have any thoughts off the top of your head?
I don't know the definitive answer, but they went public through a SPAC, a special purpose acquisition vehicle, basically like an entity. It was a shell of a company. And this was how many companies did this. Even
in COVID, right?
During COVID, it was very popular. One of the Virgin Galactic or whatever companies with Richard Branson, they went public through a SPAC merger. Basically, it's an entity that was already public, listed, and they were putting companies public that were shell companies, so the stock price was like very low. And then the shell company would then partner or merge with a bigger private company. So the bigger private company steps into the shell of this public company, and it's a very low stock price. Now all of a sudden there's actual financials, and the companies are doing millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions or whatever of revenue. And so now all of a sudden the stock price shoots up, and then the investors who put this whole thing together, and I'm not saying this is exactly what happened with ATI, but this is potentially what happened with ATI. The investors that put this together, like the bankers and the financiers and all that had nothing to do with ATI, the stock price goes up because it was a small shell company that was basically worthless or had a low value dollar amount. Now you have a company that comes in that's got whatever 1,000 locations or whatever, hundreds of thousands, hundreds of millions in revenue they're doing, and now all of a sudden the stock price shoots up, and the folks that built the whole deal together through the SPAC can cash out like very early, and then everyone else is sometimes left as the sucker holding the bag later.
So I have the timeline from ATI, and Dave is right. Dave's going blind on that. Like no notes in front. There's no way he had notes in front of him.
We did not prepare that. That's all off the cuff, ladies and gentlemen.
So here's the 6 things that happened, right? What Dave said: failed SPAC deal and weak reporting, shrinking market capitalization and delisting. By December of 2024, they went with the SPAC in 2021. ATI's average global market capitalization fell well below the $15 New York Stock Exchange threshold. So they were delisted in 2024. That's pretty recent. Weak financial performance and under-earning capital, legal and litigation challenges, a lawsuit filed by investors between 21 and 23 accused ATI of mismanagement, labor cost issues, lack of transparency, rising debt and liquidity, industry pressures, and reimbursement cuts and competitive strains. These are all number problems. Like, this is the thing that this should annoy all of us, is like, this says physical therapy is not a good business play. That's not what it says. Like, what it says was some things were misreported. Like, I know I'm oversimplifying, like you have to, because we're an hour live stream with 3 nitwits, but like, this doesn't say this can't and shouldn't work, right? It feels like, if anything, it was just rushed.
Yeah. And that's not knowing behind the scenes. Like, that's what you typically see. It's that time of year. School starts for my kids in about a week. We're getting sports physicals, we're getting, checkups, all that kind of stuff. My wife goes in, she brings one of our boys in. There's the receptionist who's, checking us in. There's two people behind the receptionist who, one I'm assuming is insurance verifications and somebody else is doing something else. There's the medical assistant. There's one doctor in this office, mind you. There's the medical assistant who takes my wife and my boy back. Then there's like a person at checkout. And then there was a sixth person, I don't even know doing what. 6 people supporting one medical professional. And I would
doesn't make sense
every single time. Like, here I have one person supporting 2 full-time clinicians, and that person takes care of everything. Like when I would go into doctors' offices and we would talk about, their business and stuff like that. I've shared this story. There was a surgeon, I want to say he was doing 1.3 million in revenue. He had like 10 people supporting him. He was the only surgeon there. And so what happens? You get an idea, you start a business, you hire a person. They need some help. You hire a second person. The first person goes from doing 80% of what you expected them to do to 60% of what you expected them to do. Then the second person needs a helper. So you hire a third person. Then everybody goes down to 40% of what you expected them to do. And every subsequent hire makes the previous people less efficient. The original person, who probably was pretty good, gets sick of it because they're like, I'm bored. This is not challenging. This is what they leave. And the culture just continues to decline. And the worst part about it, the most frustrating part to me that I've seen for 25 years in business, the person doing the least is usually the most resentful, who thinks that they are doing the most.
Explain that.
So like by the time you get down to the newest person who's producing the least amount of productivity, whether it's administrative or clinical or whatever, they have no perspective on what a real normal human can do or should do. They think that they're overworked. They think that they're underpaid because they're coming into this disaster of a culture. And it's typically the person who actually does the least who's the most resentful to the employer about what they're getting paid and think that they're doing too much. I mean, that's the decline of a typical organization. Usually at that point, the owner's frustrated. They want to get out. They're sick of it. They're not making any money. Everybody working for them thinks that they're making, millions and keeping it from them. And it's just a cancer in a business that ultimately destroys it. And so I'm sure, I would imagine at scale with ATI and other companies like that, that's where it goes. That's the life cycle. That's why so many of the owners we talk to are burnt out. They're not making more than a typical new grad salary, even though they're working way more hours than anyone else.
Hey, it's Dave Kittle. Are you a healthcare business owner or physical therapy practice owner who is looking to figure out your succession plan or exit strategy? We might be able to help. And in fact, we may be interested in acquiring your practice. If you're interested, you can reach out to me. Shoot me an email at dave@conciergepainrelief.com. That's DAVE@CONCIERGE painrelief.com. Or you can call me at any time, 646-781-8884.